My hands were shaking when I said the words. "I'm leaving," I told him. The words felt heavy and strange in my mouth, like stones I had been holding for years. I had practiced them in my head 100 times that week. I had said them softly and loudly, in the shower and in the car, until they were nearly gone. But this time I said them out loud, in our kitchen, with the morning light on the sink and the kettle still warm from yesterday. He stood by the table, holding his coffee like it was the only thing steady in the room. His face was pale. Outside, a wind pushed the loose leaves down our small street. Inside, the clock on the wall ticked too loudly. The house smelled like old bread and laundry soap, the smell of a life stitched together from small ordinary things. He blinked at me, slow and real. "What?" he asked, voice thin. He looked like a man who had been reading the wrong page in a book. I had loved him for a long time. Loving him had been a warm fire that kept me from freezing. But that fire had been left alone too long. It had burned out. "I can't do this anymore," I said. I put my hand on the handle of the drawer where we kept stamps and batteries and the small things that repair a life. I opened it, and the little silver things sat like tiny, useless islands. My suitcase leaned against the chair, half open and waiting like a patient heartbeat. I had bought it the week before, a cheap black one with wheels. It looked too small and brave all at once. When I said, "I'm leaving," the sound of those words filled the room. For a moment the world held its breath with me. He did not speak. He set his cup down so carefully that the saucer did not make a sound. The steam faded from the surface of the coffee, and the kettle hissed in the other room. This quiet was worse than the loudest argument we had ever had. Quiet becomes a kind of loud when you have been arguing inside your head every night for years. I picked up my toothbrush from the cup, silly small thing to pick up in a huge moment, and I walked to the bedroom. My hands moved like a machine. I opened the wardrobe and pulled out a few shirts, the ones I knew I could wear without thinking too long. I folded them the way my mother had taught me, corners neat, edges even. Each fold felt like a small, private goodbye. He came behind me. I felt his breath on my neck for a second. Then he said, "Please don't go." His voice was nothing like the man who had argued with me about bills and dishes. It was a child's voice, breaking on the shore of a storm. He sounded small. I didn't turn. I kept folding. "I have tried," I said. "I have tried to make us work. I can't breathe here anymore." He reached for my hand. He didn't grab it hard. He let his fingers touch mine like a plea paper thin as tissue. "I can change," he said. "I will. I'll do whatever you want. Just don't leave. I beg you." Those words, "I beg you," were foreign in our house. He had always been stubborn, proud, and clumsy with emotion. Hearing him beg made my heart stutter. For a moment I felt the old heat, the memory of dinners we laughed through, of small jokes and cups of tea. I felt everything I had once loved about him flicker like a match. But the weight in my chest did not lift. Years of quiet dinners, slammed doors, nights where I lay awake and watched the dark, all those small hurts had grown. They had grown into a map of cracks across the floor of my life. I could not step around them anymore. I picked up my toothbrush and put it in the suitcase, then my small jar of face cream, then a folded dress I had not worn in months. I moved slowly so I would remember each thing that belonged to me. He watched me, eyes glossy. He sat down on the edge of the bed and said, "Tell me one thing. Just one thing you want, and I'll make it happen." I put in my favorite sweater. The touch of the wool was a memory, 100 small afternoons on the sofa. "I want respect," I said. "I want honesty. I want to feel like I matter." My voice did not shake now. It was quiet and steady, like a small river. He pressed his face into his hands. For a moment I could hear muffled breathing. Then he looked up, and he was a man I almost didn't recognize. The corner of his lip trembled. He wiped his eyes with the back of his hand like it was something he had not been taught to do before. "I didn't know you felt like this," he said. "I didn't see the cracks. I was so busy. I am so sorry." He began to tell me things I had never heard him say. He said he had been seeing a counselor in the mornings for the past month. He said he had stopped drinking after seeing how tired I was. He said he had been trying to change in his way, but he had been afraid to tell me. His words tumbled out like a child who had been hiding a secret toy. I listened. Part of me wanted to drop the suitcase on the bed and walk into his arms. Part of me wanted to close the door and never look back. The tug of memory is cruel. It pulls like the sea, and you never know which way it will take you. You can't ask me to decide now, I said. I need time. I zipped my suitcase a little. The sound made him flinch. It was a small sound that sounded very final. Then the most strange, sharp thing happened. He stood up quickly. He moved so fast he knocked the lamp, and for a second the room blurred. He came to me and took both my hands. I know you need time, he said, voice low and urgent. But please, don't go today. Let me show you. Let me prove it. Just 1 week. 1 month. Anything. If I don't change, then go. Promise. His face was close. I could see the wet shine at the corner of his eyes, the lines near his mouth I had once traced without thinking. I could smell the coffee on his breath. He looked desperate in a way I had never seen. My heart did that strange flip-flop. The suitcase sat at my feet like a small dark promise. I wanted to believe him. I wanted to fold up the anger and tuck it under my pillow. I wanted to take his hand and start over. But the pile of small nights had been stacked high. I had already packed years into that suitcase. Evenings where he had left the table without saying why. Mornings I woke to find he had gone and left the house heavy and cold. The times he had laughed at my dreams instead of listening. I had thought about leaving for months. I had written lists. I had whispered plans into pillows. I had saved a little money, told my sister, and found a place where I could breathe. Each item I put in the bag was a step. He looked at me with a face that asked everything and promised the moon. For a moment I felt pity and fear and love all blended into one strange soup. My fingers stopped on the zipper. I felt the pull between staying and leaving like 2 hands on my shoulders. Then, just as I tugged the zipper to close the suitcase, everything changed. There was a sound like thunder, a heavy cracking noise, and the floor under my feet jumped. The picture on the wall rattled. We both turned toward the front of the house. Through the window I saw something I did not want to see. A car barreling into the neighbor's fence, then jumping the curb, then slamming into the front of our house. Glass exploded. The loud crash filled the room like a shout. The world went sideways. Dust and smoke spilled into the hallway. I felt the suitcase wobble and then slide from my hands. My heart hammered so loud I thought it might break my ribs. He grabbed me. He held me. His face was white and terrified, and suddenly there was no plea for love left in his eyes. Only the animal fear of a man who is not sure if he can save the person he loves. I opened my mouth to scream. The sound stuck in my throat. Outside, someone shouted. Metal groaned. Something hot hit my cheek. And in that chaos, I realized I had not answered him. I had not said yes or no. I had only hung between the 2 choices like a bird in a cage. The house shook again, and a piece of plaster fell from the ceiling and landed on the suitcase. I dropped to my knees and reached for it, but my fingers touched something wet and warm on the floor. I did not know what it was. I looked up at him. He was looking at me with a look I had never seen before. "Don't you dare go," he said, voice gone from pleading to raw. "Please." Dust filled the air like smoke from a broken dream. I covered my mouth with my sleeve, trying to breathe. My heart felt too big for my chest. I could hear the metal outside still groaning, like the car was alive and angry. The smell of fuel slipped into the house, sharp and strange. He pulled me up from the floor. His hands were shaking. "Are you hurt?" he asked. His voice sounded far away even though he was right in front of me. I don't know," I said. My legs felt weak, like they did not want to stand on this earth anymore. The floor under us still trembled a little, like it remembered what had just happened. We stumbled toward the living room. A part of the wall near the front door had cracked open. Pieces of paint and wood were everywhere. The sound of someone crying drifted in from outside. It was not a soft cry. It was sharp, like someone had been cut. My suitcase lay on the bedroom floor behind us, half-zipped, clothes spilling out like small, scared voices. But I couldn't think about that now. Something bigger was happening. Something we didn't understand yet. When we reached the entryway, we could finally see the car. Its front was smashed deep into our wall, glass around it like glittering ice. The headlights flickered weakly, like they were blinking awake from a nightmare. The driver's door was open, and a man lay halfway out, not moving. "Oh no," I whispered. My throat felt tight. He rushed forward, but I grabbed his arm. "Wait. What if it's dangerous? What if? I can't just stand here," he said. He pulled away gently and stepped outside. He was careful, but fast. The wind pushed dust around him as he moved closer to the car. I stayed inside for a second. My hands wouldn't stop shaking. My mind kept flashing back to the moment before the crash. Me holding my suitcase, him begging me to stay. I had been ready to leave. Ready to walk out and start again. Now the world felt twisted, like someone had grabbed it and spun it too hard. A loud cough came from the man on the ground. Then a moan. I hurried out, my feet crunching on broken glass. My husband knelt next to the stranger, talking softly. "Sir, can you hear me? Stay with us." The man moved his hand weakly. Help me," he whispered. Before we could say anything else, a small scream cut through the noise. I turned sharply. A little girl, no older than 5, sat in the back seat of the car. She had been hidden behind the crushed door. Her tiny hands pressed against the window, eyes wide with fear. She wasn't crying loud. She was making these soft, broken sounds, like she was trying not to be heard. "Oh my goodness," I breathed. I stepped forward, but the door was bent, twisted like a crumpled soda can. "We need to get her out," I said. He nodded. "But we have to be careful. The car could collapse more." He tried the front seat door. Stuck. He tried the back. Not moving. The girl watched us with frightened eyes. Her cheeks were streaked with dust. My chest pulled tight. She reminded me of something I didn't want to remember. A promise I had once made to myself. "Wait," I said. "Let me try the other side." I ran around the car. My slippers slid on the broken pieces scattered across the ground. I reached the other back door. It was bent too, but not as badly. I pulled. Nothing. I pulled harder. My fingers slipped. I tried again. My shoulder burned. "Open," I grunted. "Please open." The girl made another soft sound. Her tiny face pressed harder to the glass. I could see her shaking. I pulled again, using all my strength. Then, crack. The door snapped free just enough for me to shove my hand inside. I unlocked it from the inside and pulled again. This time it opened. The girl reached out her arms immediately, crying silently. Her whole body trembled. I carried her out, hugging her close. "It's okay," I whispered, even though nothing felt okay. "You're safe now." She buried her face in my shoulder. My husband came around the car. His face softened when he saw the girl. "Is she hurt?" "I don't think so," I said. "Just scared." He nodded. "Ambulance is coming." Someone down the street already called. We walked back toward the house, away from the crushed metal and the leaking fuel smell. My arms tightened around the girl. Her small fingers clung to my shirt like I was the only solid thing in the world. But inside me, something strange happened. A warmth. A memory. A door I had closed long ago. I pushed the thought away quickly. This wasn't the time. He stood next to me, looking at the damage to the house. His chest rose and fell fast. "We're lucky," he said. "If you were standing here, If you had walked out already. He didn't finish. I didn't answer. The girl trembled in my arms. I smoothed her dusty hair. Then my husband turned to me slowly. His face had changed, softer, almost afraid. Why did you take so long to pack? He asked quietly, voice shaking. If you had left earlier, you could have been right where the car hit. I swallowed. I don't know. But I did know. His begging. His fear. It made me pause. Even after everything, part of me still cared. Maybe too much. He took a small step toward me. Maybe you stayed because you still feel something, he whispered. Before I could reply, the little girl in my arms suddenly lifted her head. She looked past me. Her eyes widened. She pointed at something behind my husband. Then she whispered one single word. Blood. My heart dropped. The little girl's voice was soft, but the word blood cut through the air like a knife. My husband turned around slowly. At first, I didn't see anything. The dust was still floating everywhere, making the world look blurry. Then his eyes widened, fast, sharp, the same way mine did when I finally saw it. A thin red line was running down his arm. It dripped from his elbow and hit the ground, making tiny dark spots in the dirt. I'm fine, he said quickly, almost too quickly. He pressed his other hand over the wound. It's just a scratch. But I knew him. I knew his "I'm fine" voice. It was the same voice he used when he hid things he didn't want to talk about. That's not a scratch, I said. He stepped back like he didn't want me to come closer. The girl in my arms pressed her face into my neck again, but she kept peeking, watching him with wide, shaking eyes. I said I'm okay, he repeated. But then he staggered. Just a small step, but enough to make my stomach twist. Sit down, I said, my voice firm. Right now. For a moment he looked like he might argue, but then his shoulders dropped. He sat down on the low wall by our walkway. His fingers trembled as he tried to keep pressure on the wound. More blood seeped through. I set the little girl gently on the porch, kneeling so my face was level with hers. Sweetie, I said softly, can you stay right here for a moment? I need to help him. She nodded, but she held on to my sleeve like she didn't want to let go. I gave her a small smile and freed my arm slowly. When I turned back to my husband, I noticed something I hadn't seen before. Shards of glass were stuck in the side of his jacket. Tiny, glittering pieces. Some had cut through the fabric. Did the window hit you? I asked. He took a shaky breath. When I went to check on the driver, the door snapped back. I guess a piece flew. He tried to sound calm, but his voice broke a little. I crouched next to him and gently moved his hand. The cut was deeper than I thought. Not life-threatening, but bad enough to scare me. I need to clean this, I said. Stay still. He laughed weakly. You're still taking care of me, even when you're trying to leave. I froze. Those words stung, not because they were mean, but because they were true. My hands hesitated over the wound. I didn't look at him. Right now isn't about that, I said softly. But inside, something twisted. I stood and ran inside to grab the first aid box. As I opened the bathroom cabinet, I saw my half-packed suitcase on the bedroom floor. Clothes spilling out. A zipper left open like a question. For a moment I forgot what I came for. My fingers touched the suitcase. The fabric felt heavy, like it carried all the memories and hurts I had stuffed inside it. Then the little girl outside cried softly, and I snapped out of it. I grabbed the first aid kit and rushed back out. When I sat beside him again, I cleaned the wound carefully. He winced but didn't pull away. You don't have to do this, he whispered. I know, I said. The girl watched us silently from the porch, hugging her knees. When I finished wrapping his arm, he let out a slow breath. Thank you. I didn't answer. I stood, wiped my hands on my jeans, and looked toward the crashed car again. The sound of distant sirens filled the street. Help was finally coming. But something about the accident still felt wrong. The driver had groaned earlier, but now it was quiet. Too quiet. I turned to look at the little girl. "Where's your mommy?" I asked gently. She shook her head. "Your daddy." Another shake. My husband frowned. "Were you in the car with him?" he asked. The girl didn't answer. She looked at the car, then at us, then dropped her gaze to the ground. Before we could ask more, the front door of our house creaked, even though no one had touched it. I froze. The wind had been blowing, but not hard enough to move a door that heavy. My husband stood slowly, his bandaged arm held close to his body. "Did you leave it open?" he asked. "No," I said. "I closed it when I came out." We stared at the door. It swung wider, creaking. My skin prickled. The girl stood suddenly, pointing again. Not at my husband this time, not at blood, but at the dark hallway inside the house. Her tiny voice trembled. "Someone's in there." My breath caught in my throat. The girl's voice was barely more than a whisper, but it felt like the whole world went silent to listen. My husband and I stared at the open doorway. The hallway inside was dark, too dark, like the shadows were piled on top of each other. The wind couldn't have pushed the door open that far, not after the crash shook the whole frame. My husband stepped forward, but I grabbed his good arm quickly. "You're hurt," I whispered. "I'm not letting you go inside alone," he whispered back. The little girl moved closer to me, wrapping her tiny fingers around mine. Her hand was cold, trembling. I gently squeezed it, even though my own hand wasn't steady. "Are you sure someone is inside?" I asked her softly. She nodded fast. One sharp, frightened motion. My heart hammered in my chest. First the crash, then the driver hurt, then the blood, and now this. Everything was happening too fast, like the world had decided to throw all its storms at us at once. But we couldn't stay outside forever. I looked at the girl. "Stay close." She nodded and held on to my shirt. My husband stepped in first, slow and careful. His injured arm hung by his side, the bandage already spotted red. I followed right behind him, and the little girl stayed glued to my leg. The house looked different now. The crash had shaken everything, and dust floated through the air like tiny ghosts. The hallway light flickered, something it had never done before. "Hello," my husband called. "Is anyone in here?" His voice echoed down the hall. No answer. But then, a soft thump. From the living room. He glanced at me. I nodded even though my stomach twisted into knots. We walked toward the sound. My husband pushed the living room door open with his foot. What we saw made me take a sharp step back. The picture frames on the wall had fallen, all of them, scattered across the carpet. But that wasn't the worst part. In the middle of the room, right on top of the broken glass, was something that didn't belong. A shoe. A man's shoe. Old, dirty, and covered in mud. My husband frowned. "That's not mine." I shook my head. "It's not from the driver either." His shoes were clean. I saw them. The girl pointed again, her tiny hand trembling. "He ran inside." My heart jumped. "Who?" She opened her mouth, but words wouldn't come out. She just shook her head and clung to my leg tighter. My husband stepped forward to pick up the shoe. "No, don't touch," I started, but it was too late. He lifted it up. It was heavier than it looked. Mud fell off in little chunks. The bottom of the shoe was torn, as if the person wearing it had run a long, rough distance. My husband turned it over. Inside the shoe was a folded piece of paper. He looked at me. "Should I open it?" My voice came out small. "Yes." He unfolded it slowly, careful not to tear it. The paper was creased so many times it looked like it had been opened and closed 100 times. He held it up so we could both read it. 3 words were written in messy, shaking handwriting. "He found US." My entire body went cold. "Us," I whispered. "Who is US?" The man in the car? The girl. Who? Before I could finish, a loud bang came from the back of the house. The little girl screamed and covered her ears. My husband dropped the paper. That came from the bedroom, he said, voice tight. My bedroom. The room where my suitcase still lay open. He took a step toward the hallway, but the girl suddenly grabbed my hand and shook her head fiercely. Don't go, she cried. Don't go, he's angry. My breath froze. Who? I asked. Who is angry? Who came into the house? She pointed toward the dark hallway again, and whispered. The man who followed us. My husband and I locked eyes. Then another sound came, a slow, dragging scrape across the bedroom floor. Then a second one. Someone was in the room. Someone who shouldn't be there. I tightened my grip on the girl's hand as the scraping sound grew louder. And then, a shadow stepped into the hallway. The shadow stretched long across the hallway floor, bending and crawling over the dust like something alive. I felt the little girl press herself against me, her small body shaking so hard I could feel it through my clothes. My husband stepped in front of us, even with one injured arm. His breathing grew shallow, and I could tell he was trying to swallow the fear rising in his throat. The shadow moved again. Slow. Dragging. Not like a person walking, like someone pulling themselves forward with uneven steps. My husband whispered, "Stay behind me." I wanted to tell him no, he was hurt, and I was terrified, but the words wouldn't come out. My tongue felt heavy, stuck in my mouth like glue. The little girl tugged my shirt. "He's looking for me," she whispered. "For us." "Who?" I asked again, desperate now. "Who is he?" She didn't answer. She just stared at the hallway with big, glassy eyes. Then the figure stepped into view. He was tall, too tall. His shoulders nearly brushed the top of the doorway. His clothes were torn, dirty, and wet with something dark. His face was half hidden behind messy hair, and the other half was covered in scratches. One of his eyes looked swollen, almost closed. The other eye, the one we could see, was wild, bright, and full of something I didn't want to name. He stared right at us. Not at my husband. Not at me. At the girl. "There you are," the man said in a raspy voice. He stepped forward, dragging one foot behind him. "You can't hide. Not again." The girl screamed and ran behind me, burying her face in my back. I wrapped an arm around her, holding her tight. My husband raised his uninjured arm. "Stop right there. You need to leave this house now." The man tilted his head slowly, like he didn't understand the words, or like he didn't care. "You took her," he growled. "You took my little girl." My heart stopped. "What?" My husband frowned. "We didn't take anyone. She was in the car." "She ran from me," the man shouted, his voice cracking like thunder. "She ran and you picked her up. She belongs with me." The girl sobbed. "No, no, no." I held her tighter. "She's scared of you," I said firmly. "Who are you? Why are you chasing her?" He stepped forward again. My husband stepped back, blocking us with his body. I said stop. But the man didn't stop. He lunged. My husband pushed me out of the way, and we all stumbled backwards. The girl screamed. My husband grabbed the edge of the hallway table with his good hand and swung it down just as the man charged. The table hit the man's shoulder with a loud crack. He fell sideways, crashing into the wall. Dust rained down. Picture frames shattered on the floor. "Run!" my husband shouted. "Take her and run." But I couldn't leave him. Not like this. Not with a stranger who looked like he had crawled out of a nightmare. The man pushed himself up slowly. His head drooped to one side. He looked dizzy, but not defeated. His good eye glared at my husband. "You think you can keep her from me?" he growled. "She's mine." "No, she's not," the girl screamed behind me. "You're not my daddy." Everything froze. Even the air. The man blinked. Once. Twice. Then a twisted smile crawled across his face. You don't remember, he whispered. But you will. I'll make you remember. My husband stepped toward him, but the man suddenly reached into his pocket and pulled out something metallic. A small, sharp object glinted in the low light. I grabbed the girl and moved back fast, heart pounding so hard I could hear it in my ears. My husband shouted, "Put it down." But the man didn't put it down. He laughed. A broken, cracked laugh. Then he rushed forward. My husband tried to block him, but the man slammed into him with full force. They crashed into the hallway wall. My husband's injured arm hit first. He cried out in pain. The little girl clung to my side, screaming. The man raised the sharp object. He brought it down. I didn't think. I didn't breathe. I grabbed the nearest thing, a heavy glass vase from the living room shelf, and I ran forward. The world blurred. I swung the vase as hard as I could. It hit the man's arm with a dull thud. He yelled and dropped the sharp object. It clattered to the ground, a broken piece of metal from the car's dashboard. He turned toward me slowly. His wild eye burned. You, he hissed. You shouldn't have done that. I stepped back, clutching the girl behind me. My husband tried to stand, but the man shoved him down with one heavy push. He stalked toward me. 1 step. 2. 3. I held the vase tight, even though my hands were shaking so badly it felt like it might slip. Then, a loud wail filled the house. Sirens. Police cars. Ambulance. The man froze mid-step. My husband looked up. The girl held her breath. Then the front door burst open. Police! A loud voice shouted. Don't move. But the man did move. He turned around and ran deeper into the house. Straight toward the back door. Straight toward my half-packed suitcase. Straight toward the only way out. The officers chased after him, shouting commands. I held the girl close, heart racing, watching the man disappear into the shadows of my own home. Then I heard the backyard door slam. And one officer shouted, "He's escaping through the woods." The officers rushed out the back door, shouting into their radios as they charged into the trees behind our house. The sirens outside screamed louder, flashing red and blue across the living room walls. I stood frozen, holding the girl so tightly she whimpered against my shoulder. My husband leaned against the wall, breathing hard, his injured arm pressed to his chest. His face was pale, but he tried to smile at me. "You okay?" he asked, voice shaky. "No," I whispered. "Are you?" He gave a weak half-laugh. "Not really." I wanted to run to him. I wanted to fall into him and cry, but the girl in my arms trembled like a leaf in a storm. I gently stroked her hair, trying to calm her even though I was shaking too. "It's over," I told her softly. "The police will catch him." But the girl shook her head quickly, violently. "No," she whispered. "He always comes back." The way she said it made my stomach twist. Before I could ask her anything else, 2 officers entered through the back door again, without the man. "Did you catch him?" my husband asked anxiously. One officer shook his head. "He's fast. Knows how to hide in the woods. But we're searching the whole area." He glanced around the damaged living room. "We need statements from all of you. And we need someone to check your arm, sir." My husband nodded slowly as the officer examined the injury. Meanwhile, another officer knelt in front of the girl. "Sweetheart," he said gently, "can you tell us your name?" She pressed her face into my shirt and stayed silent. "It's okay," I whispered to her. "They're here to help." But she wouldn't speak. She only clung to me tighter. One of the officers stood and looked at us carefully. "We need to know who that man is." He seemed unstable. "Unstable," my husband scoffed. "He tried to hurt us. He chased this girl. But before he could finish, the little girl lifted her head. Her lip trembled. And she finally spoke. "He's not my daddy," she whispered. "But he keeps saying he is." She wiped her eyes with her tiny hand. "He took me. He grabbed me when my real mommy wasn't looking." My heart broke listening to her. The officer nodded gently. "We're going to help you find your mom, okay? You're safe now." Safe. That word felt too fragile. Too thin. Like it could crack at any second. The officers continued asking questions, but I barely heard them. My mind drifted to everything that had happened in the last hour. The crash, the father's madness, the shoe with the note. He found US, the blood, the chase. And through all of it, one thought kept pushing through. If I had left earlier, I might have been alone in this house when the man broke in. Or worse, I might have been walking right past the spot where the car hit. My suitcase was still in the bedroom, halfway zipped. The clothes inside were covered in dust now. And suddenly, for the first time that day, I didn't know whether I wanted to leave anymore. The fear of the stranger, the shock, the close call. It all made my heart twist in ways I didn't understand. My husband touched my shoulder gently. "Hey," he said, his voice soft and careful. "You're shaking." I hadn't even noticed. "I'm okay," I whispered. "You're not," he said, stepping closer. "Neither of us are." His voice wasn't angry. It wasn't defensive. It was scared. Scared for me. Scared for us. A paramedic came inside then, rushing to my husband to check his arm. I held the girl while the officer talked to her, but she kept hiding her face. Poor child. A few minutes later, a tall policewoman came over to me. "We contacted Child Services," she said gently. "They'll help find her family." The girl gripped my shirt tighter. "No," she whispered. "Please, don't make me go." My heart throbbed painfully. "She's attached to you," the policewoman said softly. "It's normal after something traumatic." Then she lowered her voice. "But she'll only stay with you temporarily. Just tonight, maybe. Until we locate her mother." "Tonight," I repeated. My husband looked at me, surprised. "She'll stay here." The girl peeked up at me with wide, watery eyes. "Please," she said. "Don't let him take me again." My chest tightened. I stroked her hair. "You're safe," I whispered. "I promise." Just as I said that, an officer from outside shouted into the house. "We found something." Everyone moved at once. The policewoman motioned for us to stay inside, but curiosity and fear pushed me toward the door. Officers were gathered at the edge of the woods behind our house. Flashlights pointed to the ground where something lay in the dirt. I stepped closer. And then I saw it. A small trail of footprints. Leading away from our backyard. Big footprints. Fast. Uneven. Then a second set following them. Smaller, lighter. Child-sized. The little girl's eyes widened when she saw them. "That's me," she whispered. "From when I ran." My blood ran cold. My husband frowned. "So he's been following her for a long time?" But before anyone could answer, one officer shouted, "There's more over here." We hurried deeper into the yard. Another object lay half buried in the mud. A photograph. The officer picked it up carefully. When he turned it around, my heart stopped. It was a picture of the little girl. Standing in our backyard. Taken days, maybe weeks, before today. The child gasped and grabbed my hand. My husband whispered, "But how? Why our house?" The officer looked at us gravely. "He wasn't chasing her randomly," he said. "He's been watching her. Watching this place. For a while." My stomach twisted painfully. Then the officer revealed the part of the photo I hadn't seen yet. In the corner of the picture, drawn in red marker, was a circle around my face. Not my husband. Not the girl. Me. The officer swallowed hard. "I think he's after more than just the child." The girl started to cry. My husband reached for my hand. And then, from the dark trees behind the house, a branch snapped. Loud. Close. Too close. The snap echoed through the woods like a warning shot. Every officer turned at once, flashlights whipping toward the dark trees. Their beams sliced through the shadows, but the forest swallowed the light too quickly, as if it were hiding something, or someone. The little girl gripped my hand so hard it hurt. My husband stepped closer until his shoulder touched mine, his breath shaky and uneven. Another sound came, crunch, like a foot pressing on dry leaves. "Stay together," an officer whispered. "Do not move." No one dared breathe. The woods went silent again. Too silent. Even the insects seemed to stop humming. Then, a voice drifted out. A whisper. A man's voice. "I see you." The girl screamed and buried her face in my stomach. My husband pulled both of us behind him, even though he was injured. The officers raised their guns. "Come out with your hands up," one shouted. But the forest only answered with another whisper, floating through the cold air from a different direction, as if the voice moved. "You can't hide her." The police moved in a tight formation, inching toward the trees. My heart thudded so hard I felt it in my throat. The girl trembled against me like a leaf in a storm. My husband leaned close. "We need to get inside. Now." I nodded, but my feet felt glued to the ground. Another whisper came, closer this time. "She's mine." That snapped something in me. I grabbed the girl's hand. "Move," I whispered sharply. My husband guided us backward toward the house while the officers advanced into the woods. The policewoman stepped between us and the trees, shielding us. "Inside, quickly," she urged. We stumbled into the living room. Once the door shut, my knees nearly gave out. My husband locked the back door, then every window in sight. The girl clung to me, crying softly. "He won't stop," she whispered. "He never stops." I hugged her tightly, feeling her tiny heartbeat racing against mine. "You're safe now," I whispered, though I wasn't sure if it was true. My husband's face was pale, but his jaw was tight, that look he only got when he was terrified but trying to stay strong. "We'll protect her," he said quietly. "No matter what." A loud knock made us jump. It was the policewoman. "We need you all in one room. Stay away from windows. The officers are circling the property." We gathered in the living room, the girl on my lap, my husband beside me. The house was too quiet. Every creak felt like a footstep. Every shadow felt like eyes watching. My husband looked at me, really looked at me, with a mix of fear and something else, something heavier. "If you had walked out with your suitcase earlier," he whispered. "If you had left me today, you would have been out there alone when he came." The thought made my stomach flip. I looked down at the girl curled against me. She needed me. My husband needed me. And I realized something terrifying. I could have died today. I could have vanished into the woods like someone stolen by the night, and no one would have known why. My throat tightened. Suddenly footsteps pounded up the stairs. Heavy, fast. The policewoman reached for her radio. "Who's upstairs? Identify yourself." No response. The footsteps continued, across the hall, toward the bedrooms. Then, crash. Something toppled over in our room. My suitcase. My half-packed suitcase. "No," I whispered. "He's inside." The policewoman barked into her radio. 2 officers rushed into the hallway with guns drawn. My heart pounded as we waited. The girl hid her face in my chest. My husband held my hand so tightly his finger bones pressed into my skin. Then, a scream. One of the officers' voices filled the house. "He's running, down the stairs." Before we could move, a dark figure burst into the hallway. The man. Wild-eyed. Bleeding. Breathing like an animal. He wasn't looking at the police. He wasn't looking at my husband. He was looking at me. "There you are," he whispered. "I knew you'd come back." My blood turned to ice. He ran toward us. The policewoman lunged in front of him, but he shoved her so hard she slammed into the wall. I screamed. The girl screamed louder. My husband stepped in front of us, but the man's eyes stayed locked on me, hungry, desperate, furious. "You tried to leave," he growled. "But you can't leave me. Not again. Not again." I shouted. "I don't even know you." He froze at those words. His face twitched, then twisted. "You forgot," he whispered. "They always forget." He took another step. My husband grabbed a heavy lamp and swung it at him, but the man ducked and shoved him to the floor. The girl sobbed uncontrollably. The man reached for me. "I found you," he whispered. "And I'm taking you back." Bang! A gunshot exploded through the room. The man jerked forward. His body shook. For a moment, he didn't fall. He just stared at me with hollow, confused eyes. Then, he collapsed. Right at my feet. The girl screamed. My husband crawled to me and wrapped his arms around both of us, trembling. Officers flooded the house. The policewoman lowered her gun, breathing hard. "He's down," she said. "He's not getting back up." I swallowed hard, my whole body shaking. I looked down at the man on the floor. But I didn't feel relief. Because on his other hand, the one not reaching for me, I saw something I hadn't noticed before. A ring. A wedding ring. Worn down. Scratched. Old. And engraved with 3 faded initials. Not his initials. Mine. My husband stared at it too, his face draining of color. "Why?" he whispered. "Why does a stranger have your initials on his ring?" I didn't have an answer. Because suddenly, I wasn't sure he was a stranger. The world spun. The room, the lights, the officers, the cries. Everything blurred as I stared at the ring on the dead man's finger. His hand lay inches from my foot, still twitching as the last bit of life slipped away. My initials. On his wedding ring. My husband looked at me, searching my face as though the truth might spill out of my eyes. "Do you know him?" he whispered. No. I don't. I swear I don't." But my voice trembled. The little girl hugged my waist so tightly I could barely breathe. She cried into my shirt, her tears soaking through the fabric. Officers carried her aside gently, promising to keep her safe. My husband knelt beside me, holding my hands. "You're shaking," he said. "Look at the ring," I whispered back. Why would he? One officer approached, his voice steady but concerned. "Ma'am, we need to ask. Are you sure you've never met this man before? Ever? Anywhere?" I shook my head fast, but then, a flicker. A flash. A sudden image in my mind, so quick, it felt like lightning inside my brain. A forest. A broken cabin. A man screaming my name, not my husband's voice. A little girl crying. My hands covered in dirt. Me running. Running and not looking back. I gasped, grabbing my head. "What is it?" my husband asked urgently. "What did you remember?" "It's nothing," I said quickly, too quickly. "Just shock." But deep in my chest, something twisted. Another officer knelt by the dead man's body and lifted the ring gently. This inscription. "SLB, these match the initials you gave us earlier for your name, ma'am." My breath hitched. Lots of people could have those initials. The officer nodded. "Maybe. But we have to check everything." I felt the weight of everyone's eyes on me. My husband stepped closer, his voice low and steady. "Tell me the truth. Please." I looked at him. The man I had almost left this morning. The man who had begged me to stay. The man who had just protected me with his life. But the truth? I didn't have it. All I had were tiny shards of memories that didn't belong to the life I knew. Memories that felt like dreams. or nightmares, or pieces of someone else's story stuck inside my head. I don't remember him, I whispered. I promise. But something feels wrong. The officers exchanged glances. The paramedic tending to my husband suddenly froze and pointed toward the window. Sir. Everyone, look. We all turned. Outside, at the edge of the woods, stood a woman. A woman with wild hair. A torn dress. Bare feet muddy from running. And eyes that looked exactly like the little girl's. She lifted her hand and pointed straight at me. At me. Then she shouted, "You took everything from US." The officers rushed outside. The moment they did, she turned and sprinted into the woods. My husband grabbed me as I stumbled backward. What is going on? Why are these people after you? Why? I don't know. I cried. I don't know anything anymore. The little girl heard the woman's voice and screamed, "Mommy!" She ran to the door, but an officer blocked her gently. "That's her mother," my husband whispered. The girl nodded, sobbing. "But she's sick. And she listens to him. She listens to the bad man. They said you were the reason we had to hide." My blood ran cold. "Me?" I whispered. "Why me? I've never." But the girl shook her head. "He said you ran from them. That you stole something. That you were supposed to be with them. That you were the one who forgot." Forgot. The word hit me like a stone. My knees buckled. My husband caught me. "I want to go home," the girl cried. "I want my real mommy. But not when she's with him. She wasn't always bad. She changed after he came." The police brought her back into the room and shut the door. A deep, aching silence filled the house. Finally, one officer spoke. "Until we know more, we need to place you under protection. Whoever these people are, they targeted you. Not by accident." My husband looked at me, tears in his eyes. "Tell me everything," he whispered. "Even the parts you're scared to say." I swallowed hard. My hands shook. "I don't know the whole story," I began. "But now I think I understand one thing." "What?" he asked. I took a long, trembling breath. "I wasn't supposed to leave today." He frowned. "What do you mean?" "If I had walked out that door, if I had gone down the street alone." My breath broke. He wasn't coming for the girl. He wasn't chasing her that day. My husband's eyes widened. He was waiting for me. The room went painfully quiet. The officers exchanged looks again, alarmed, serious, understanding everything all at once. My husband pulled me close. "I'm not letting you go," he whispered. "Not now. Not ever again." I leaned into him, shaking, realizing the truth. Leaving him was supposed to be the hardest part of my day. But something darker had been waiting for me. Something from a past I couldn't remember, or one I wasn't supposed to remember. The policewoman sighed deeply. "You're safe for tonight. But tomorrow, we dig into your past. All of it." I nodded slowly. My husband kissed my forehead. The little girl curled up beside me on the couch. And through the window, the woods stared back, quiet now, but full of secrets that refused to stay buried. I whispered to my husband, "I told you I was leaving. But now I'm afraid I might never be allowed to." He held me tighter, and I prayed silently for morning to come. Because the night still felt like it was watching us. If this story pulled you in, if you felt the tension, the fear, or the heartbeat of every twist, don't leave just yet. Backhand index pointing right, hit the like button to support the channel. Backhand index pointing right, subscribe so you never miss another story filled with suspense, emotion, and unforgettable moments. Your support helps these stories come alive. Thank you for being here.